The Yggdrasil did not arrive. It tore a hole in the universe, bleeding. It was not a jump in the clean, sterile language of physics that the old data archives described. It was a birth, a violent biological dimensional rupture. The Yggdrasil's tunneler womb had contracted, gripped the fabric of spacetime and pushed. Now it floated in the void, a 100-kilometer-long asymmetrical thing that defied every definition of ship. It was a monster. From a distance, it looked like a charred, roaming continent, an asteroid of impossible size, covered in a kilometers-thick, space-hardened bark of black, rocky fungus. Its engines were not cones of metal, but a series of pulsating bioluminescent gills near the stern, venting faint, pearlescent clouds of spores and superheated steam. Vast, fibrous vines, some thicker than a cruiser, snaked around its body, forming a chaotic, web-like superstructure that pulsed with a slow, faint light. It did not reflect the light of the nearby yellow star. It absorbed it, drinking it in. It smelled of ozone, wet earth, and ancient, copperish blood. 20 kilometers down, relative to the ship's artificial gravity, Kalen Kale was already outside. His world was the bark. He was a walker, one of the 50 men and women who tended to the Yggdrasil's skin. His suit was not metal. It was a semi-living symbiont, a glistening, chitinous second skin grown from the ship's own biomass. It was connected to him by a sapphire tether that fed him nutrients and recycled his air. His boots, heavy with magnetized iron roots, crunched on the porous, rocky surface. The jump had been rough. The Yggdrasil was wounded. A 20-kilometer gash had been torn in the bark, a raw, red canyon where the dimensional shear had sliced the ship's hide. Kale stood on the precipice, looking down into the ship's flesh. He could see the arterial conduits, vast, root-like tubes, pulsating weakly, leaking silvery nutrient fluid into the void. "Heart chamber, this is Walker 1, Kale's voice was a low rasp filtered by his mask. "The womb scar is deep. We're losing sap. Arterial node Gungnir 4 is severed." He didn't wait for a reply. He unslung his tool. It was a sap caulker, a living, pulsating, rifle-shaped thing that fed from a scab sack on his back. He aimed it at the gash and fired. A thick, steaming, rust-colored stream of coagulant goop shot out, striking the wound. It was Yggdrasil's, blood plasma. It steamed on contact with the vacuum, instantly hardening into a tough, fibrous seal. This was his job. He was not a mechanic. He was a surgeon. He was healing his world. He was so focused on the wound that he almost missed the light. "Walker 1, a new voice crackled in his ear, breathless and sharp. "Kale, look up." It was Aris, Dr. Aris Thorne, the historian. Kale stopped his work. He anchored his boots, the iron roots digging into the bark. He turned his head and looked. His breath hitched. The Yggdrasil had not jumped into empty space. They were surrounded. It was a fleet, but it was unlike anything the old data archives had ever shown. The ships were not ships. They were sculptures of spun glass and starlight. They were perfectly symmetrical, all curves and harmonious, flowing wings that seemed to be made of asterisk solid. Music. They glowed with a pure, inner, white-blue light. There were hundreds of them hanging in the void like a constellation of angels. And the Yggdrasil was the demon that had just bled all over their heaven. "Gods," Kale whispered, the word a relic from the archives Aris loved so much. "Aris, what are they?" "I don't know," Aris's voice was trembling halfway between terror and rapturous discovery. "But, Kale, I think this is it. The curse of data. The first seed's mission, contact." Deep inside the Yggdrasil in the heart chamber, the reality was far less poetic. The heart chamber was not a bridge. It was a cavern. It was vast, cathedral-like, and wet. The walls were not metal. They were living tissue, a dark, pulsating, red-black flesh interwoven with a trillion bioluminescent fungal strands that lit the room in a dim, sickly green glow. The air was thick, humid, smelling of ozone and ammonia. The floor was a membrane, soft and yielding. In the center of this cavern was not a command chair. It was a throne of asterisk living, roots. And she was on it. Myra, the heart tender. She was not human, not entirely. She was fused with the throne. The roots grew into her back. Her skin was pale, almost translucent. The same green bioluminescence of the fungus flowed in her veins. Her eyes were closed. She was the Yggdrasil's captain. She was its central nervous system. She was in agony. "The jump," she gasped, her voice a wet gurgle. "The wound, it burns us." Dr. Aris Thorne stood beside her, his hand uselessly on her cold shoulder. He was the opposite of Myra. He was all. human. He was thin, bookish, pale from a life spent. Under the bark he wore cloth woven from milkweed fiber. He was the last linguist, the last historian, the only man alive who knew the legend of a place called Earth. Myra, focus, Eris pleaded. The pain is not the priority. Look through the vines, look outside. Myra gasped. Her connection to the ship's senses was absolute. The vines were her eyes. She saw the fleet. They are pure, she whispered, a strange tone entering her voice. Oh, they are clean, no flesh, no blood. They're alien, Aris said, his heart pounding, and they're hailing us. On a slab of obsidian-like chitin near Aris, data scrolled. It wasn't text, it wasn't sound. It was music. A complex signal of harmonious chimes and pure mathematical tones. It was beautiful, it was serene. And to the Yggdrasil it was agony. The ship itself groaned. Myra screamed. The pure harmony was like a knife in her symbiotic mind. The Yggdrasil was a creature of chaos, of biology, of imperfect life. This purity was poison. The heart chamber thrummed. The ship itself lashed out instinctively. It broadcast its own signal. It wasn't music. It was a sound, a low-frequency roar, a biological thrum of pain and rage and fear, the sound of a 100-kilometer animal, wounded and cornered. No, Eris shouted. Myra, stop, tell it to be silent. It cannot, Myra cried, writhing on her throne. It is afraid. They are hurting it. Aboard the prismatic hymn, the flagship of the crystalline Concordat, first chime, Xylia recoiled. Her body was a 7-foot-tall fractal of living amethyst and light. She did not have a face. She had a core, a pulsating star of blue-white energy. She communicated through the chiming of the crystalline shards that floated around her. The ship that had appeared was an abomination. It was an Omega-level biothreat. She had watched it tear a hole in the harmonic space of the Tolana system. She had watched it bleed filth into her clean system. Spores, bacteria, viruses, organic compounds so vile and complex her sensors could not classify them. The Concordat was a civilization of pure crystalline life. They had conquered entropy. They had eliminated decay. They did not die. They shattered and were reformed. This thing, this monstrum, was a floating mountain of rot. It was covered in 1 billion souls of disease. She had sent the first contact, harmony, the universal greeting of mathematics and peace. And the monster had roared. The sound had hit her ship. It wasn't a sound, it was a wave of pure dissonance, a plague of chaos. Her junior chimes on the bridge had flickered. One of them cracked. This was not a ship, it was a weapon, a terror. All ships, Xylia chimed, her voice a sharp shard of ice. Activate purification fields. This is a Class Omega contagion. It is hostile. It is a floating terror. She looked at the leaking monster. It was so ugly, so imperfect, so filthy. A sensor alert flashed. Something was moving on the monstrum's hull, a tiny parasite. She zoomed in. It was a creature, a small, fleshy, asymmetrical thing in a glistening suit. It was spraying more filth onto the ship. Parasites, the monster was infested. No, wait. A new signal came from the monster, not the roar, a crackle, a hiss, a voice. Wait, we are not hostile. Please do not fire. We are human. The parasite on the hull looked up Kale. The image on Xylia's screen resolved. It was Aris, his face pale, sweaty, wet flesh. 2 eyes asymmetrical, a hole in his face that flapped. Xylia felt a sensation she had never felt before, not fear, not anger. Revulsion. It speaks, her second chime whispered. The parasites are the source, Xylia chimed. The monster is their vessel, a plague infested with sentient disease. She looked at the leaking wound, the spores, the bacteria. Her fleet's shields were already registering microcolonies. The humans were contaminating her system just by existing. First chime, the weapons chime, intoned. The monstrum is within range of the Tolana Forge. No, Xylia chimed. That is for planets. It is too slow. We will sterilize it now. She raised her crystalline hand. All ships target the monstrum, fire a warning purification wave. We will cleanse the outer shell. We will show them what purity truly is. On the bark, Kale saw the crystalline ships glow. Eris, he shouted, they're charging, they're not listening. Keep talking, Eris's voice was desperate. This is a misunderstanding, they're scared. They're not the only ones, Kale muttered and aimed his sapcaulker, not at the wound, but at the crystalline fleet, a useless gesture of defiance. A wave of invisible energy left the Pharaon fleet. It wasn't a laser, it wasn't plasma. It was a sound, a perfect C-sharp, so pure and so powerful it became a weapon. It hit the Yggdrasil. Kale screamed. It didn't burn him, it vibrated him. The symbiont suit rippled, his bones ached, the bark under his feet cracked. The purification wave was designed to shatter imperfect molecular structures. And all biology is imperfect. The bark began to disintegrate. The wound he was healing burst open. The sap instantly boiled. Myra in the heart chamber shrieked a sound of unmaking. And the Yggdrasil itself, a wounded animal, finally lashed out. The Yggdrasil's retaliation was not a decision, it was a spasm. The purification wave was an asterisk, agony beyond comprehension for Myra plugged into the Ark's core. It was the sound of 1,000,000,000,000 cells being torn apart. The symbiotic mind that governed the ship did not register a warning shot. It registered an attempted murder. It panicked. In the heart chamber, Myra threw her head back, her cry indistinguishable from the ship's own keening wail. The bioluminescent roots of her throne flashed a violent blood red. Myra, no, hold it back, Eris shouted, grabbing her shoulders. Her skin was burning hot. HURTS, she screamed, her voice no longer human. It was a chorus of 1,000,000,000 dying microbes. BURNS, the void is poison. Outside on the bark, Kale felt the retaliation begin beneath his feet. The entire 100-kilometer hull flexed. The vast fibrous vines that webbed the ship, the ones the Pharaon had mistaken for sensor arrays or superstructure, snapped taut. They were not vines, they were muscles, they were weapons. Kale, Aris screamed in his ear, get off the skin, it's going to spore. Kale didn't hesitate, he knew that word. It was the Yggdrasil's last defense, the one that hadn't been used in 1,000 years. He slammed his fist on his chest plate. Retrieval now. The sapvine tether went rigid, reeling him in at a bone-jarring speed. He crashed against the hull next to his insertion hatch, a puckered sphincter of bark that iriseed open just as he arrived. He dived through it into the wet darkness of the access tunnel. Behind him, the Yggdrasil attacked. Dozens of massive pustules along the ship's flank, pustules that looked like craters, burst open. The muscle vines contracted. With a series of wet thuds that shook the ship to its core, the Yggdrasil fired its kinetic spores. They were not torpedoes, they were SEDS. Each one was the size of a frigate, a massive bark-encased projectile accelerated by a biological magnetic field. They shot out into the void, not at the Pharaon ships, but around them, a warning. All except one. In its pain and rage, Myra's control had slipped one spore shot true. It flew at a Pharaon cruiser, the Harmonic Clarity. Aboard the Clarity subchime, Calyx watched the monstrum convulse. He saw the projectiles. Kinetic impacts, he chimed, his voice a sharp note of surprise, not fear. Kinetics were primitive. His ship's harmonic shield was perfect. The spore hit the shield. The shield flared. The outer bark of the spore vaporized. But it wasn't a rock. The impact shattered the spore and released its contents, a cloud of billions of hyperadaptive microbes, bacteria engineered by the Yggdrasil for one purpose: to find a food source and consume it. The bacteria cloud washed over the Harmonic Clarity. The shield was designed to stop energy, to deflect mass. It was not designed to stop life. The microbes passed through it. They landed on the pristine, flawless, crystalline hull of the Pharaon ship. For a second, nothing happened. Then a sensor chimed. Hull integrity at 99%, the defense chime reported, confused. Impossible, Calyx chimed back. 98%. Calyx looked at the external view. The hull was no longer glowing with a pure white light. It was turning a sickly brown-green. The bacteria had found a food source, the energy matrix of the living crystal. They were EATING, the ship. It's rot, a junior chime. SCREMED, a sound of pure dissonant horror. The plague is EATING, the light. Inside the ship, the rot spread. The crystalline walls of the bridge began to discolor, to run with a foul organic slime. The Pharaon crew recoiled. This was a concept from their most primal ancestral nightmares, the concept of decay. 95%. Evacuate, Calyx chimed, his own form flickering in panic. Eject the core, eject, TH. He never finished. The rot reached the bridge. It touched his crystalline foot. He looked down. His perfect amethyst form was turning to a dull gray sludge. He didn't shatter. He dissolved. The Harmonic Clarity, its internal systems, consumed by rot. Its crew, a screaming mess of dissonance and sludge, cracked open. Its containment core failed. It exploded, a silent, beautiful crystalline flower of death. Aboard the Prismaticum first chime, Xylia watched it all. She watched her ship be CONSUMED. She watched her crew dissolve. The revulsion was gone. It was replaced by a cold, pure terror. This was not a ship. This was not a plague. This was hell. The monster didn't break you. It didn't kill you. It unmade you. It turned purity into filth. It turned light into rot. It is a weapon of entropy, she chimed, her voice trembling. The rest of her fleet was already pulling back, their shields at maximum, their purification waves firing frantically at the clouds of bacteria the Yggdrasil had loosed. It is a floating terror, her second chime agreed. It must be destroyed from a distance. Xylia's core flashed with a cold fury. The humans, the parasites that drove this abomination. You are correct, Xylia chimed. She opened a system-wide channel. Tolana Forge control. A new chime answered, deep and resonant. We hear first chime. The Tolana Forge was not a ship. It was a station, a moon-sized tuning fork in high orbit around the star. It was a terraforming tool designed to shatter dead worlds by finding their base resonance and amplifying it. It had never been used as a weapon. Target the monstrum, Xylia ordered. Find its dissonant frequency. First chime, it is a biological entity. It has a trillion frequencies. Then find the one that binds them, Xylia retorted. Find the one that is its soul and shatter it. It will take time to tune the forge. Control chimed 1 hour. You have 1 hour, Xylia replied. She looked at the Yggdrasil. It had stopped firing its spores. It was floating again, leaking and wounded. It looked like it was waiting. Good, Xylia thought. Wait, rot, we will end your sickness. In the heart chamber, the rage had faded. Myra was slumped on her throne, shivering. The symbiotic link was flickering. She was half-human again. Eris, she whispered, tears streaming down her pale cheeks. I killed them, the ship. It heard them dissolve. They were singing, and we turned them to sludge. Eris was white-faced, staring at the debris of the harmonic clarity on his own crude monitor. First contact, he breathed, and we committed genocide. We used a bioweapon. It wasn't us, a new voice roared. Kale stormed into the heart chamber, his symbiont suit still steaming from the purification wave. He ripped his helmet off, revealing a face of pure fury. They fired first, he yelled, stomping onto the membrane floor. His heavy boots were an intrusion in the sacred space. They attacked the Yggdrasil. They burned me. This is not a misunderstanding, Eris. This is a war. We fired a plague, Kale, Eris shouted back. We melted them. Look. I see, Kale bellowed. I see 1 dead ship, and I see hundreds more out there, and they are not singing peace songs anymore. He was right. The Pharaon fleet had formed a perfect perimeter, a quarantine. They're waiting, Myra whispered, her eyes flickering with the Yggdrasil's senses. They're charging something big, a station. It's humming, it's building a note, a terrible low note. Eris felt his blood run cold. A resonance weapon, the one thing a biological ship could not defend against. They're going to shatter us, Eris said. They're going to vibrate us to dust because they think we are a disease, a monster. We are a monster, Eris, Kale roared. He stomped over to the wall and slammed his fist into the pulsating flesh. And if we're going to die, we're going to die like one. He turned to Myra, his eyes burning. Myra, forget him, forget the old data. Listen to the arc. It wants to live. Tell it to fight. Tell it to spore them all, ram them, bleed on them. If we are the plague, then let's be the plague. No, Eris whispered, horrified. Kale, that's genocide. We can't. They are trying to kill us. The 3 of them stood in the pulsating green light, the last humans in the universe, at war with an alien race and at war with themselves. This philosopher, the warrior, and the dying god. There is 1 hour, Myra whispered, her voice shaking. That low hum of the Tolana forge was already making her teeth ache. What do we do? The Yggdrasil drifted in the center of the crystalline web, a necrotic heart in a body of pure light. The low, subsonic thrum of the Tolana forge was no longer a distant threat. It was a physical presence. It vibrated in the ship's nutrient fluid, in the humid air of the heart chamber, in the very bones of the 50,000 humans living within the Ark's fleshy, cavernous interior. It was the sound of a countdown, a vibration that promised unmaking. In the heart chamber, the conflict between Kale and Eris had reached a breaking point. We run, Eris said, his voice strained, his hands splayed open as if to physically halt Kale's aggression. We have the tunneler womb. It's wounded, but it's functional. We can birth again. We can leave. We run, Kale spat, his faceplate still in his hand, his knuckles white. They hit us, Aris, they burned our skin, they're trying to kill us, and you want to run, the Yggdrasil is, our home, we don't. Run, we fight. We fought, Aris shot back, his intellectual calm cracking, revealing the terror beneath. And we rotted, living, beings, to death. Did you hear, Myra, they sang, as they died if we do that. Again, we are the monster. They think we are, we prove them right. I don't care what they think, Kale roared, stepping so close his chest plate clanked against Aris's thin fibercloth shirt. I care that we live, and we can't live if we're dust. Stop, both of you. Myra's voice was weak, but it cut through the rage. She was shivering, violently, now the resonance from the forge interfering with her symbiosis. Her skin flickered, the inner light struggling. You are both wrong, she gasped, her eyes closed in pain. We cannot run, the womb is too damaged, the jump we just made tore its flesh. If we try to birth now, we will just die in the rupture, mid-transit. Kale's face went pale, the only way out was gone. And we cannot fight, Myra continued, tears leaking from her closed eyes. Kale, I felt it, the plague hour. Weapon, it's not just a weapon, it's a hunger, the Yggdrasil, it wanted to feed, it enjoyed their decay. If I let it loose, I will not be able to stop it, or myself, I will become a predator. The terrible truth settled in the cavern, heavier than the humid air. They couldn't run, they couldn't fight. And in less than an hour the Tolana Forge would tune its note, and they would all be undone. So what? Kale whispered, his fury collapsing into a cold dread. We just sit here and die. We let them shake us apart because they don't like our smell. Aris was silent, his mind was racing, sifting through the old data, through physics, linguistics, xenobiology he didn't have. They think we are plague, Aris muttered, packing on the membrane floor. They think we are chaos, dissonance, rot. They attacked us with harmony, with purity. They sent a message of pure math. He stopped, he looked at the bioluminescent walls, the fungal strands that carried the Yggdrasil's thoughts. Kale, Aris, said, his voice suddenly sharp, you're a walker, you tend the bark, the fungal network, it carries Myra's commands, right? Bioluminescence. Yeah, Kale said, confused. It's how the ship talks to itself, pulses of light. Why? The Pharaon talk in light and music, Aris breathed, his eyes widening. We can't send radio, our comms are a biological screech to them, but what if we don't use radio? What if we use the ship itself? What are you talking about? We can't talk to them in our language, so we have to talk in theirs. Aris ran to his data slate, his fingers flying. Math, they sent us math, we can send it back. Myra, can you control the whole luminescence, not just random pulses, but specific patterns? Myra groaned, her body arched in pain from the forge's hum. I can try, it will hurt, the network is reeling. What patterns? Primed numbers, Aris yelled, a manic energy gripping him, the universal language of intelligence. We will turn the entire Yggdrasil into a glowing billboard. We will flash prime numbers at them. Kale stared at him. We're going to blink at them. Yes, Aris shouted, we are going to show them that the plague can do math. We are going to show them we are intelligent. It's our only chance. Kale looked at Myra. She was pale and sweating blood, but she nodded. It's the long shot, Aris, Kale growled, and I don't like it. What if they don't care? It's better than being shaken to pieces or starting a plague war. Fine, Kale relented. Fine, you blink. While you're blinking, I'm preparing a backup plan. What backup plan? Aris asked suspiciously. Kale tapped his all walker's suit up. We're going to prep the shedding. If Aris's light show doesn't work, we're going to give them a new target. Kale, what is the shedding? Kale looked at Aris, his eyes cold. It's what the arc does when it's dying. It detaches its bark, all of it, a 100-kilometer decoy. It won't save us, but it might buy us a few minutes. He didn't wait for a reply. He turned and stomped out of the heart chamber. Myra, Aris said, turning back to her, his hands shaking. We have to do this. I'll feed the sequence to you. Just make the ship flash. Aboard the Prismaticum, Xylia watched the monstrum. The forge was at 50% charge. The final resonant note was almost isolated. The low hum was a comfort, a promise of cleansing. First chime, her sensor chime, intoned. The monstrum is altering its energy signature. The bioluminescence is spiking. Is it preparing to fire its plague spores? Xylia asked. No, first chime, it is just glowing. Wait. The entire 100-kilometer black mass of the Yggdrasil FLASHED. A single brilliant green pulse of light. 1. It went dark. Then flash, flash. 2. It went dark. Then flash, flash, flash. 3. What is this? Xylia's second chime whispered. A threat display. No, Xylia chimed, her core pulsing slowly. She watched. Flash, 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 flash. 5. Dark. Flash, 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 flash. 7. It's talking, Xylia breathed. It's not chaos, it is sequence. Sequence of what? Primes, Xylia chimed, her mind reeling. The disease is sending us prime numbers. It understands mathematics. The revelation sent a shockwave of dissonance through her own crystalline mind. A plague should not be intelligent. Rot should not understand logic. It is a trick, her weapons chime insisted. A mimicry. The forge is at 70%. Hold the charge, Xylia commanded. Hold it. First chime, that is against protocol. The contagion. IS speaking, Xylia flared. Be silent and listen. The Yggdrasil continued to flash. 11-13-17. It was working. Aris's plan was working. In the heart chamber, Aris was weeping with relief. They stopped. Myra, the hum, it's not getting stronger there. LISDNING. Myra was convulsing on the throne. The effort of controlling the entire fungal network with such precision was shattering her mind. Blood was dribbling from her nose. Keep going, Aris urged. Now for the picture. Show them the planet. Show them the circle. He sent the new command. The Yggdrasils, flashing, stopped. Then a new image appeared, painted in bioluminescence across the stars, a crude circle. Aboard the Prismaticum, Xylia watched. A sphere, a planet. They are showing us a world. Hope. It was a strange dissonant feeling. Maybe this was not a monster. Maybe it was just a different kind of life. Then the signal stopped. The flashing circle vanished. The prime numbers stopped. The Yggdrasil went dark. What happened? Xylia chimed. First chime, the sensor chime, screamed. The monstrum is CHANGNG. Massive internal energy surges. The outer hull is cracking. Xylia's hope shattered. It was a trick, she roared. A distraction. It was lying. The math was a lie. It is preparing to attack. TOLLANA forge. Fire, fire, now. But first chime, the tuning is not perfect. Fire AT will shatter the abomination. On the bark, Kale was welding the last detonation charge to the hull. His comm blared. Kale, no, they were. LISDNING. It was working. It was Aris. It's too slow, Aris, Kale shouted back, his voice strained against the rising vibration of the forge. Myra is dying. She can't hold the signal. I'm ending this. Kale, you're making them think we're hostile. We are hostile if they're trying to kill us. Kale looked up. He saw it, a beam of pure sound invisible to the eye, but he could see it distorting space, lancing across the void. The Tolana Forge had fired. All walkers, Kale roared into his calm. Detonate, shed the skin now, now, now. He slammed his fist on the activator. The resonance beam was seconds away. With a groan that dwarfed any sound it had made before, the entire 100-kilometer bark hull of the Yggdrasil cracked open. The resonant forge beam was not light, it was pressure. It was a focused scream of physics that tore across the 200,000 kilometers of empty space. In an instant it was tuned to the chaotic frequency of the Yggdrasil's bark, the very thing that held the monster together. It struck its target, or what it thought was its target. In the final second, Kale's desperate gambit paid off. The detonation charges fired, the shedding protocol activated. The Yggdrasil's 100-kilometer bark was not just a hull, it was a cocoon, a decades-thick symbiotic shell grown over 10,000 years of drifting. The charges didn't explode outward, they severed the bark from what lay beneath. The resonance beam hit the now-detached trillion-ton mass of dead fungus and bark. The effect was instantaneous and total. The bark did not explode, it disintegrated, it turned to a cloud of gray dust and ice crystals, a 100-kilometer-long ghost of a ship instantly undone. Aboard the Prismaticum, a chime of victory began. Target is neutralized, the weapons chime sang. The monstrum is dust, the plague is cleansed. Xylia felt a wave of profound relief. The terror was over, the lying intelligence was gone. She allowed her core to pulse with a serene blue. Order was restored. Wait, the sensor chime suddenly intoned its note. Do not add summaries, disclaimers, or filler. Flat dead sound. First chime, something is inside the dust cloud. The celebratory chime died. What? Xylia demanded. The resonance wave is gone. The dust is settling. I am reading a new object, a solid object. It's metal. Xylia stared at the viewscreen. The vast cloud of gray debris was parting, and something was drifting in the center. It was not bark, it was not flesh. It was a ship, a real ship. Black, angular, scarred, ugly. It was a 30-kilometer-long cylinder covered in burns patches and the raw red stumps of the severed biological roots. It was ancient, it was brutal. It wasn't a monster, it was a coffin, a relic. It shed, Xylia whispered, the terror returning, but different, colder. The flesh was a disguise, it was a cocoon. The monster wasn't the ship, the monster was hiding inside the ship. First chime, the sensor chime shrieked. The metal object is radiating hard radiation, gamma rays, neutrons. It's powering up a fission reactor. Fission, the dirtiest, most primal energy. The Concordat hadn't used it in a million years. And first chime, the chime continued, its voice trembling. I am detecting weapons, not spores. Kinetic launch tubes, dozens of them, and a massive magnetic field building at the prow, a mass driver. The lie was total. The plague was a distraction. The math was a ruse. This was its true form, a warship, a terror of metal and radiation. Inside the heart chamber, which was now revealed to be the ancient metal bridge of the original Exodus Ark. Chaos reigned. The shedding had thrown them all to the ground. The bridge was cold, metallic, and dead. The bioluminescent roots that had once coated every surface were severed, hanging like dead vines, weeping silver sap onto the steel deck. Eris was gasping, staring at the metal walls. This was underneath it all along. Myra was free. The throne of roots had died and retracted, dumping her onto the floor. She was just a woman, now pale and shivering, the glowing light in her veins already fatting. The symbiosis was broken. "It's cold," she whispered, rubbing her arms. "Eris, I can't hear it. The Yggdrasil is dead." "No," Kale roared. He was already at a console, a dead black obsidian slab. He slammed his fist into it. "This is the Yggdrasil. This is its bones. The bark was just a blanket. The heartseed is still the reactor." He tore a panel from the wall, revealing a series of massive copper levers. Primitive manual. "This is what the walkers truly tended," Kale shouted, his voice echoing in the metal room. "Not just the skin, the heart." He grabbed the levers and pulled. Deep within the Ark, a 10,000-year-old fusion reactor coughed, sputtered, and then roared to life. The metal deck vibrated. The lights, FLICKRED red combat lighting, bathed the bridge in hellish light. A monstrous ancient machine had just woken up. "Kale, what are you doing?" Eris whispered, horrified. This was not biology, this was war. "I'm saving us," Kale bellowed, strapping himself into a gunnery station that looked like an Iron Maiden. The shedding wasn't a decoy, it was a distraction. It bought us time to wake up the real ship. "The Tolana Forge can't refire for 10 minutes, Myra said, her voice small, reading a flickering display. "But the rest of the fleet is moving in there, scared." "Good," Kale snarled, his hands gripping the gunnery controls. "Let them be scared. They wanted the monster. They get the monster." Targeting the forge, charging the main driver. "Kale, no," Eris screamed, lunging at him. "You can't. That's murder. We can still talk to them. The math was working." "The math got us shot," Kale roared, shoving Eris to the deck. "Survival is the only language the universe understands, and we are going to speak it." This was the turning point, the betrayal not of each other but of an ideal. Eris's hope for peace was dying on the cold steel floor. Kale's primal need to survive had taken over. He was no longer a walker, he was a gunner. Aboard the Prismaticum, Xylia watched her fleet move in to engage the metal hulk. Her mind was a storm of cold fury. "It mocked us with math," she chimed. "It tricked us with biology. It is a creature of pure deception. All ships open fire. Use cutting lasers. Dissect the hulk. Leave nothing but atoms." The crystalline fleet unleashed its true power. Hundreds of beams of pure white-hot light lanced out, converging on the black metal arc. On the bridge of the Yggdrasil, the ship screamed as the lasers hit. The ancient hull glowed cherry red. "Hull ablating," Myra shouted, strapping herself into the dead heart throne, which now functioned as a simple captain's chair. "It won't hold for long. The outer layers are boiling off." "It doesn't have to hold long," Kale roared, his eyes fixed on his targeting reticle. The forge was in his sights. "Mass driver is at 90%, just 10 more seconds." "Kale, please," Eris begged, pulling himself up. "This is our soul. Don't do this." "Souls don't stop lasers," Kale shouted, "but this will." 95%. The ship groaned as a laser sliced deep into an outrigger. 98%. Kale Aris screamed and he did the only thing he could. He threw himself at the console, slamming his hand down on the comms panel, the one he'd been working on. 99%. Fire. Kale roared and slammed the firing stud. At the exact same moment, Aris's hand hit the broadcast switch. A massive slug of depleted uranium, the size of a building, was hurled from the Yggdrasil's prow at a fraction of the speed of light. And from the Ark's damaged comm array, a single signal burst out, piggybacking on the Pharaon's own frequencies. Not math, not a voice. Music. Bach Cello Suite No. 1. The slug flew toward the forge. The music flooded the Pharaon comms. The climax was here, a missile of war and a message of art fired at the same heartbeat. The universe held its breath. Kale's slug was pure physics. It did not care about music. It flew silent and invisible, a ghost of iron and hate. Aris's music was pure emotion. It did not care about physics. It filled the void with a structured melancholy longing. Aboard the prismatic hymn, Xylia was flooded with sensation. The cutting lasers of her fleet were slicing into the metal hulk. Her tactical display showed the mass driver projectile streaking toward the defenseless Tolana 4. And her ship was filled with the sound of the cello. It was the most horrifying thing she had ever experienced. It wasn't pure harmony, it wasn't pure dissonance, it was both. It was a single voice arguing with itself, finding beauty in its own loneliness. It was structured sadness. It was mathematical grief. It was complexity. It was entropy and order forged into one. It was the very definition of biological life, of a human soul. "It's beautiful," her second chime whispered, its light flickering with a strange purple hue. "It hurts." "It's a trick," Xylia chimed, but her voice wavered. The slug was 1 second from impact. The forge was lost. The war was lost. On the Yggdrasil, bridge time had stopped. Kale was frozen, his hands still on the triggers, staring at his targeting display, watching his kill shot fly. Aris was on the floor, his hand still on the comm, listening to the music he had unleashed, praying to a god he didn't believe in. Myra watched them both, the warrior, the poet, the two halves of humanity, and she realized what she was. She was the heart, the one who had to choose. She was no longer plugged into the ship's biology, but the old Ark had been retrofitted by her ancestors. Her captain's chair had ports. She looked at Kale's slug. She looked at Aris's music. "You are both right," she whispered. And she jammed the neural interface ports that still hung from her temples into the ancient metal console. Pain, cold, sharp, metallic. Pain, not the warm flesh of the bark. This was logic. This was code. She wasn't the ship's soul. She was its administrator. She had 0.5 seconds. She found the slug. It was already fired. She couldn't stop it. But the slug was human. It was designed to be smart. It had a detonator, a proximity fuse. She sent one command, one word: detonate now. The slug was still 1,000 kilometers away from the Tolana 4. It exploded. The warhead was a 10-megaton nuclear device designed to crack open bunkers after the kinetic impact. A new star was born in the Tolana system, a star of pure, dirty human fury. The flash of the detonation washed over the Pharaon fleet. The shockwave of radiation and light hit their shields. The Tolana Forge was untouched, but it was bathed in a storm of gamma radiation so intense it would be unusable for weeks. Kale stared, his mouth open. "You made me miss." "No, Myra," gasped Sweat, beating on her forehead from the mental strain. "I made you warm them. I turned your bullet into a warning shot, a really loud one." She looked at Aris. "And your music is beautiful, but it's not enough. They need to understand us." She took control of the comm. She didn't stop the box. She spoke over it. Not in words. She was Myra, the heart tender. She had been the soul of a biological arc. For 30 years she knew pain, she knew fear, she knew loneliness. She pushed her own emotions down the channel, not the Yggdrasil's rage, her own. The cold of losing the Ark Mother, that fear of the resonance beam, the grief for the Pharaon she had rotted, the fierce primal burning love she felt for the 50,000 souls asleep in the hulk behind her. She sent tragedy, she sent resilience. Aboard the prismatic him, Xylia was reeling. The nuclear detonation had blinded her sensors. It was an act of unfathomable power, a threat. But the music was still playing. And underneath it was a new signal, a psychic whisper, the human named Myra. Xylia felt it. She felt grief, she felt loss, she felt a desperate will to protect. These were not the sensations of a mindless plague. These were not the thoughts of a cold killer. They had fired a sun-killing weapon at her forge, and they had detonated it harmlessly. They were playing music that made her soul ache. They were showing her their pain. "They are not a monster," Xylia chimed, her voice a new sound, a broken chord. "They are an arc." The lie wasn't the math, the lie wasn't the biology. The lie was her own perception, her own arrogant purity. She saw the metal hulk drifting in the radiation of its own warning shot, still being pelted by her fleet's lasers. She saw a refugee, a survivor, a thing of flesh and metal, chaos and code that was so terrified of dying it was willing to kill to survive. A creature that was both Kale and Aris. "Cease fire," Xylia chimed, her voice ringing with a new authority, a terrible new understanding. "But first chime, it is the terror." "No," Xylia roared, a true dissonant chord of command. "It is a tragedy. Cease fire. All ships hold position. We are not at war. We are in the presence of mourning." The lasers stopped. The void fell silent, save for the sound of a single human cello playing its lonely heart out to the stars. The silence that followed was heavier and more profound than the forge's resonance or the ark's roar. The battlefield was a strange, suspended graveyard. The prismatic him and its fleet of lightships hung in the void, their cutting lasers extinguished, their crystalline forms still and watchful. Opposite them, the Yggdrasil's true metal heart drifted, scarred, blackened, and radiating a faint, angry heat. Between them, the vast, expanding cloud of the bark's dust. The monster's shed skin slowly dispersed, catching the starlight like a trillion gray tears. And the cello played on. On the bridge of the Yggdrasil, Kale, Aris, and Myra were frozen. The adrenaline of the climax drained away, leaving them in a cold, metallic room that smelled of ozone and hot metal. The ship was crippled. The bark, their home, their farms, their atmosphere, their protection, was gone. They were exposed. "They stopped," Aris whispered, his voice hoarse. He was still on the floor, his face pale with shock. "Kale, Myra, they stopped." Kale slowly, agonizingly, let his hands fall from the gunnery controls. His knuckles were white, his body rigid. He had been a hair's breadth from committing an atrocity and a hair's breadth from being vaporized. He didn't know which felt worse. They stopped, or they're reloading. No, Myra said. She was still plugged into the console, her eyes closed. The psychic whisper she had sent was now a two-way connection. She, the first chime, Xylia, she understands she's afraid not of us, for us. A channel opened, not the resonant, pure music of before. This was a crackle. The Pharaon were detuning their own comms, adding static, adding chaos, trying to meet the humans halfway. Xylia's voice came through. It was no longer a perfect chime. It sounded scratched like a flawed crystal. You are humanity, she chimed. It was not a question. Eris scrambled to the comms panel. We are. You are a contradiction, Xylia replied. The music was still playing softly beneath her voice. You send prime numbers and nuclear fire. You send plague and this sound. We are alive, Eris said, his voice trembling. We did not ask to come here. We are lost. Our ship, the bark, it was our world. It grew around us. We did not know it was a poison to you. We were defending our home. Your home killed 800 of my people, Xylia chimed. The sadness was unmistakable. It, dissolved, them. A heavy guilt settled on the bridge. Kale looked down at his hands. Myra's symbiosis had done that. His rage had fueled it. We mourn their loss, Eris said, his voice thick. It was an instinct, the instinct of a wounded animal. We are deeply sorry. And you, Xylia, said her voice turning to Kale. She couldn't see him, but Myra knew she was addressing him. You fired a weapon that could shatter our world, and you stopped it. Kale said nothing. He couldn't. Myra spoke for him. He was protecting us. I was the one who stopped it. We are both. First chime. We are the weapon and the hand that stays it. That is what it means to be human. There was a long silence. The cello suite ended, leaving only the hiss of the open channel. You cannot stay, Xylia finally chimed. Her voice was gentle. Your very existence is a danger to us. The spores from your shedded bark, they are already in our system. We must spend a generation cleansing them. If you stay, we will be at eternal war, and we will both be destroyed. We cannot leave, Eris replied, his despair returning. Our tunneler is broken. Our world is gone. We are 50,000 souls in a metal coffin. We have no food, no air beyond what we can recycle. We will be dead in a month. This was the end. They had survived the battle only to die in the peace. More silence. Xylia was consulting her concordat. The humans could hear the faint, rapid chiming of a desperate debate. We have a solution, Xylia returned, her voice firm. It is a compromise. You are a beautiful poison humanity, and we have a place for poisons. She sent them a file of star chart. A new system: yellow, sun 1, planet green, and blue. This is the Kalos system, Eris breathed, reading the data. It's perfect. Water, oxygen, nitrogen. It's like the legend of Earth. It is a preserve, Xylia explained. It is a world we seeded with chaotic biology 1,000,000 years ago. As a study, we found it too dangerous, too full of rot and decay to ever visit. We quarantined it for you. It would be a paradise, a new home, a new Earth. We cannot get there, Kale growled, the reality of their situation unchanged. Our drive is dead. Your tunneler womb is biological, Xylia chimed. It is wounded. We cannot fix it, but we can feed it. A squadron of Pharaon ships broke formation. They approached the Yggdrasil. They were not firing lasers. They were projecting beams of pure light and energy, not destructive, constructive. The severed stumps of the tunneler began to glow. The Pharaon were pouring pure energy into the biological systems, force-feeding the wounded organ. On the bridge, a console that had been dead flashed green. The womb, Myra gasped, feeling a faint echo of its life. It's healing, it's charging there, giving us one last jump. Go, Xylia chimed. Go to your new world. Take your grief and your rage and your beautiful, terrible music. Go and do not return. The Concordat will mark this system as forbidden. This first contact is over. Thank you, Aris whispered, his eyes filled with tears. Kale looked at the glowing fleet. They had tried to kill each other, and now they were saving them. He didn't understand it, but he accepted it. Myra, Kale said, his voice soft, take us home. Myra nodded. She linked with the charging womb. She focused on the coordinates. One last thing, Xylia chimed. The music, what is it? Eris smiled a small, sad smile. It's Bach. It is a human trying to find God by using math. I think you would liked him. We already do, Xylia chimed. Go in peace, humanity, and please do not teach your new world to sing your songs of war. The channel closed. Myra, Kale said, now. Myra took a deep breath. The tunneler womb contracted. The Yggdrasil's metal heart tore a hole in the universe. It vanished in a rupture of light, leaving the Pharaon alone in their clean, silent, music-filled system. The metal arc floated above a world of blue oceans and green continents. It was beautiful. It was teeming with chaotic, imperfect, glorious life. On the bridge, Kale, Aris, and Myra looked at the new Earth. It's cold, Kale said, his voice quiet. The ark was metal. It was no longer a living mother. She's gone, Myra whispered, feeling the final loss of the symbiosis. The Yggdrasil is dead. This is just her skeleton. No, Aris said, walking over to them. He pointed to cargo bay monitor. Not all of her. He'd done it during the fight. He'd saved one thing, a single frozen seedling, a tiny cutting from the Hearthrone's root. The monster is dead, Aris said, looking at the seedling, but the mother is just dormant. Kale looked at the planet. He looked at the seed. He looked at Aris and Myra, the warrior, the poet, the heart. They weren't a terror. They weren't a plague. They were just gardeners. Well, Kale said, a slow smile spreading across his face. He clapped Aris on the shoulder. We've got a lot of digging to do. Let's go plant our monster.